All right, let's talk about the hidden genius inside basically every single electronic device you own. And no, I'm not talking about the flashy processor or the super bright screen. I'm talking about the real unsung heroes, these tiny, brilliant circuits that actually make everything work by managing their power. I mean, think about it, right? It's a great question. You've got one 5-volt USB charger, but your phone's battery needs one voltage, your headphones need another, your camera needs something else entirely. So how in the world does that one plug power everything without completely frying them? Well, that's exactly the mystery we're going to solve. Okay, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the big universal problem. Then we'll meet the little gadgets that solve it, and we'll uncover the crazy trick they use to do it. And finally, we'll see how designers have to balance that perfect, on-paper theory with the messy, complicated real world. So here's the core problem we're up against. We get a standard voltage from our power source, like 10 volts from a power brick or 5 volts from that USB port. But the chips inside our gadgets, oh, they are super picky. The processor might demand exactly 1.1 volts, the memory needs 1.8, the screen might need something else completely, and yeah, giving them the wrong voltage, that's a very quick way to let the magic smoke out. Now, you could just use a simple resistor to burn off the extra voltage, but that's just incredibly wasteful. It's kind of like driving your car with the gas pedal floored and trying to control your speed only using the brake. All that extra energy just gets turned into heat, and heat is the #1 enemy of electronics. We need a much, much smarter way to do this. And that smarter way, my friends, is where these incredible little circuits come in. They're called DC to DC converters. Think of them like master translators for the world of electricity, and they come in 3 main flavors, each one with a very specific job. This table basically shows you the whole toolkit. If you need to take a voltage and step it down, like a phone charger taking 5 volts and turning it into 3.7, you use what's called a buck converter. If you need to go the other way and step the voltage up to power something bright like an LED, that's a job for a boost converter. And then there's the really weird one, the buck boost, which can actually flip the voltage from positive to negative. Pretty cool. So how do you actually control these things? How do you tell a converter, hey, I need exactly 3.7 volts, not 3.6 or 3.8? Well, it all comes down to timing. The secret is something called the duty cycle. It's really just the percentage of time that a tiny electronic switch inside the converter is on versus off. That's it. That's the master control knob for the whole system. And this is where we get to the real magic behind how these converters are so darn efficient. They don't fight against electricity. They don't resist it. They just guide it with a very specific and very, very fast rhythm. This is the big aha moment. That's right. Instead of just burning off energy as heat, these converters use a super high-speed switch that flips the power on and off at incredible speeds. We're talking 50,000 times a second, sometimes way, way faster. It's this insane rapid-fire switching that lets them transform voltage with almost no energy loss. So here's the basic 2-step dance. When that switch is on, current flows into a little component called an inductor, which is basically a coil of wire. It takes that energy and stores it in a magnetic field, kind of like compressing a spring. Then, boom, the switch turns off. The inductor's magnetic field collapses, and it releases all that stored energy back out, but at a brand new voltage. Okay, so all this on and off switching sounds, well, kind of choppy, right? Like a strobe light? And it is. That's where another part, the capacitor, comes into play. A capacitor acts like a small reservoir or a dam, smoothing out all those jagged pulses into a nice, clean, stable DC voltage that our delicate electronics can actually use. So we've got the basic idea down, but what's the big challenge for engineers when they're actually designing these things? Well, in the real world, that charge and release cycle isn't perfectly smooth. It creates this tiny little imperfection that designers absolutely obsess over. And that little imperfection is called current ripple. See, as that inductor charges and discharges over and over, the current flowing out of it isn't a perfectly flat line. It's actually a tiny little triangular wave. So a designer's first job is to do the math and pick the right components to make that little wave, that ripple, as small and as smooth as possible. But what if they mess it up? What happens if that ripple is too big, especially when your device isn't really doing much? When your phone's just sitting there, not drawing a lot of power. Yeah, this is where you get into real trouble. The current can actually drop all the way down to zero in between those switching cycles. They call this discontinuous mode, and it is a huge headache. The inductor basically runs out of juice for a split second, and that causes the output voltage to get super unstable and spike upwards unexpectedly. And a voltage spike like that can instantly kill the very components you were trying to power. Now here's the kicker. You think avoiding that disaster is all about just picking the right parts and doing the math correctly, right? Well, not even close. This is where things get really wild, because in this world of high-speed switching, it's not just what you use, it's where you put it. I love this quote from the source for this explainer, Electric 230. They see that the physical layout of the circuit board is really important and can make or break a design. The schematic, the drawing, can be absolutely perfect, but the physical reality is what really counts. And this slide just nails the concept. Look at that bad layout on the left. When the components are all spread out, that high-speed switching current has to travel a long path, creating a big loop. Well, that loop acts like a tiny little antenna, broadcasting electrical noise and chaos everywhere. But look at the good layout. By cramming the components as close together as physically possible, you make that loop tiny, which drastically reduces all that noise and makes the whole circuit cleaner, more efficient, and way more reliable. All right, so even if you get the perfect components and you nail the perfect layout, there is still one final boss that every single engineer has to face: the unavoidable, often frustrating gap between the clean perfection of theory and the messy reality of the physical world. So, get this. Here's a real-world test from our source. The engineer did all the math, designed a circuit that, on paper, should have had a tiny voltage ripple of just 10 millivolts. Super clean. But then they actually built the thing and measured it. The real ripple? 100 millivolts. It was 10 times worse than all the math predicted. So what happened? I mean, the calculations were right, the component values were correct. Where on earth did this extra 90 millivolts of noise just appear from? What was the hidden culprit? Well, the answer is this little ghost in the machine called ESR, which stands for Equivalent Series Resistance. It turns out that every real-world capacitor isn't perfect. It has this tiny, hidden bit of resistance inside of it. You won't see it on the schematic, it's just there. And when that high-speed current flows through that hidden resistance, it creates its own voltage ripple, adding noise that the perfect math on paper never ever saw coming. And that really gets to the heart of what engineering is all about, doesn't it? It's this constant battle between the elegant, beautiful world of perfect theory and the messy, stubborn, imperfect reality of actual physical components. Being a great engineer isn't just about getting the math right, it's about knowing how to anticipate and tame all these little real-world gremlins. So it leaves you wondering, right? If a tiny, hidden property that doesn't even show up on the blueprint can have such a huge impact on how well something works, what other invisible forces, what other hidden battles between theory and reality are being fought deep inside the technology that we rely on every single day?